Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 34, how to apply special effects with Audacity or your mixer. Welcome back to another episode of the Audacity to Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you very much for joining me. We've got some fun things in store for tonight with this recording of the episode. And by the way, I say tonight because I record these episodes live, usually on Monday nights at usually 7 p.m. And the reason I say usually is that now it's bi-weekly, and so we do this every other week. But check out the website at theaudacitytopodcast.com and more of our podcasts over at noodle.mx. In this episode, I have been saving up some ideas of what to cover for this episode because at the time of this recording, just a few days ago, was April Fool's Day. Did someone get you? I whatever. I was a fool for one thing on April Fool's Day, or two things actually that I saw, something that a friend tweeted and something that I saw online. And the thing is, I know everything I read on April Fool's Day to not take it seriously and just assume that it's not true. Everything. So if you have an emergency on April Fool's Day, it's best not to tell anyone about it because no one's going to believe you. And I certainly won't. But being April Fool's Day brings up the concept of a whole lot of fun things and funny things that you can do. And in this episode of the Audacity to Podcast, this will be all focused on Audacity as we talk about special effects with Audacity or with a mixer. Primarily, we'll be talking about Audacity. This came from an email. This concept came from an email I received from Robidoux from Personal Armament. I can't talk tonight. Personalarmament.com, which, by the way, if you go to that website, the link will be in the show notes, theaudacitytopodcast.com/34. If you go to his website, personalarmament.com, notice the little menu he has for his subscriptions, his iTunes links and RSS and contact and stuff. That's my subscribe and follow widget that I customized for him. He hired me to do that for him, and I can do that for you too. But anyway, Rob wrote in an email back in, I'm embarrassed to say this, August. Now, I got this idea from his email back in August, so that's why it's taken so long to read this on the show. Rob says, I was wondering if you can recommend a piece of hardware or software to warp voices. I would like to do some comedy pretend interview for my podcast, and I have no idea where to start. Any recommendations would be appreciated. I'm not really looking to impersonate a specific voice. I want to do some satire, an interview with a pro wrestler about self-defense, an overzealous gun shop salesman, something that makes my voice sound still human, but not like my voice. It doesn't have to be perfect. People will know it's humor. I just recently purchased a Behringer 2442 FX mixer, if that helps with anything. So I've been sitting on this message, and unfortunately I have several other messages that I have yet to respond to or address in the podcast. But I've planned this for this April Fool's Day weekend, as we talk about some crazy things that you can do and fun and funny things that you can do with your voice or with music in Audacity. And it's really easy. Some of these might require some extra plugins that you would install into Audacity, and I'll tell you what those are when we get to them. Others are simple enough that you can just load Audacity and not have to worry at all about plugins or anything, and you can just run these effects right within Audacity. First of all, let's look at a couple of these things. If you have Audacity, by the way, again, as I always say, make sure you're using Audacity 1.3.12, which is the current version. 1.3.13 13 will be coming out pretty soon in a public beta release. But the current version is 1.3.12 beta. Make sure you're using the beta. It makes so much of everything so much easier. So let's look at Audacity. And in Audacity, I have a sample audio file I've recorded here. And if you are listening to the audio of this podcast, by the way, I will have the embedded video of it in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/34. So you can watch this as I describe things. But I have a piece of audio that I have taken from a stereo and just put it down into mono. And, well, actually, I'm going to switch back to using my stereo version for some of these effects. Now, this is going to be a stereo effect, so I do recommend if you're using only a single earphone or a single headphone, plug in both of them so you can get the full effect of how some of this sounds. I have some audio here that I have recorded from my podcast, my clean comedy podcast, The Ramen Noodle. So listen to this. This is how it is in its vanilla state. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. Now, first of all, it was a pink Chevy truck, but they're not really the sponsors of this. But we're going to take that audio right now, and we're going to have some fun with it because, after all, if people can actually drive a pink Chevy truck, then it shows that there is still a sense of humor in the world, if no sense of style, that is. In Audacity, go to the Effect menu, and this works the exact same way on either Windows or OS X or even Linux. Go to the Effect menu and choose Phaser. We're going to have some fun here with this. Phaser is a tool not just from Star Trek. We're not talking about Star Trek phasers here, but Phaser is an audio processing technique that filters a signal by doing all of these different things. It makes these peaks and these kind of valleys in the sound. And what you'll end up hearing sounds kind of electronic in the way that it sounds with these peaks and valleys of the audio. And this is with the Phaser plugin or the effect, which is already built into Audacity. So you don't have to download this. But we'll set this here. It has several options that we can choose from. And I'll set the stages to... let's make this 4. We'll set dry/wet to 128. LFO frequency to 0.4. We'll have the LFO start phase at we'll put that at 20. The depth will be at 100 and the feedback at 0. Now, these numbers that I'm throwing out here, these are just kind of random numbers that I've picked. And I'll have a link in the show notes where you can learn more about this specific filter or effect and what all of these knobs and dials and sliders do. But I'll run this effect on my audio. And as it processes it, depending on the speed of your computer and how much audio you've selected, this could take a while, but I've just got a small portion here. So this is how it sounds now with those settings. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. Notice how that sounded. It was coming from one ear and then it went to the next ear and then kind of back and forth, and it was phasing in and out, going up and down, and the amplitude of it. And it also just sounded kind of electronic. And you can do that to get whatever kind of special effect that you want. This is all... Now, don't do this regularly in your podcast, but you could do this as maybe a bumper or an intro or just a special effect in your podcast. Now, what happens when I turn up the stages to 13 and process it then? The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. That is the Phaser tool. Find it under the Effect menu. And you can, of course, play with all of those settings in order to find the sound and effect that you want for your podcast, your music, your bumper, your drama. Maybe you're recording a drama and editing it with Audacity. Well, here are some ways that you can get some really cool effects with it. Moving on from the Phaser, let's talk about the wah-wah filter. This is not the filter that turns you into a crying wambulance or anything like that. This is a filter that does something that at first might seem similar, but it's not quite the same. The wah-wah filter effect comes from a music background of it was an effect to turn instruments into a more vocal sound, like the human would say wah is how the instruments would then sound with this. So just so you know where my values are in this program, that sounds funny to say that, I've set LFO frequency to 1.5, the start phase to 10, the depth to 70%, the resonance to 2.5, and the wah frequency offset we'll set that to 40. And we'll check this out, how this sounds on the audio. Again, processing time varies. So here it is, the wah-wah filter. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. What you're hearing, that back and forth, is because I've done this on a stereo file, and it's modifying both channels, the left and the right, independently. So that's not the actual effect of the filter. But now let's try the same effect on the mono version of this audio so you can get a better idea of what it's doing. And this is the mono edition. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. Can you kind of hear it going wah, 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 wah? That's what the wah-wah filter does. How could you use this? I have no idea how you could use this, but maybe you might have a use for it. This is all going to be crazy stuff. Speaking of crazy stuff, have you ever, as a kid, done things where you've seen audio played backwards, or you've heard things about, there's this stuff in music that's written backwards? Go to the effect menu and now choose reverse. There are no options for this because it's quite plain and simple what it does. It simply reverses your audio. It plays it backwards. When this can be really fun is many TV shows that you might watch employ this technique by just reversing audio. It was in Lost when you hear the voices in the forest. Sometimes the voices are backwards. It has also been in Warehouse 13, in Fringe, in many things. Even I remember it in Adventures in Odyssey. In fact, if you want to do a little experiment, let me see if I can still do this right. Try that. Take that clip right there and put it into Audacity, reverse it, and see if I make sense. Because I remember that old radio drama I used to listen to, Adventures in Odyssey, had a portion where it was reversed audio. And I learned that line well enough that back then I could say it, reverse it in Audacity. I was playing with Audacity as a kid. I would reverse it, and then I could understand what I was saying just because I spoke it backwards. So that's the reverse effect under the effects menu. Now let's try some other things on some music here. We could do it on voices too, but I'm switching over to music, and that is that we're going to change the speed of music. Now, there are three things related to changing the speed. You can change the speed, the pitch, and the tempo. Changing the speed changes both the pitch and the tempo. It's the same effect of, do you remember cassette tapes? Yeah, I don't either. But what I heard from my great-great-great-grandpa who saw it in a museum is that cassette tapes could sometimes, when you're pressing play, you can then also press the fast forward button and it would start playing it much faster. And remember what it would sound like? It'd sound like little chipmunks and it would play really fast. Well, you can do the same thing in Audacity is by changing the speed of a song. So here is a song I've selected, and this time we're going to the effect menu and click change speed. And I'm going to increase the speed, give it that effect of pressing the fast forward button on the cassette player. I drag this to 80%, And by the way, when you're changing the speed, pitch, and tempo in Audacity, never drag the slider that you'll see all the way left or all the way right, because there's some little glitch that if you do that, Audacity completely locks up. It's not just a processing time thing, but it completely locks up. So watch out for that. But this is sped up 80%. It reminds you of the little chipmunks, doesn't it? Or who are those little characters from Hallmark cards that you can get? This is a fun way that you can just do some crazy stuff. And you could even practice recording yourself talking really slow and then speed it up in Audacity to see what happens with it. And it can provide lots of laughs and hilarious things. But you can also take this the opposite way. You can slow it down. So I'm changing the speed. I'm slowing it down. So slowing it down is going to both reduce the speed. This time I'll do it minus 40%. It will slow it down and it will lower the pitch. Again, do not drag the sliders all the way to the left or right. So there you have where it is slowed down, and you notice that it lowered the pitch too. And this can be a lot of fun to play around with in things, especially take a song that you don't like all that much and slow it down, and it might turn into a horror song. Listen to this song that I've slowed down. I slowed this down 68% in Audacity. Sounds kind of scary. You could almost imagine this is like some destruction is going on in the background. Buildings are blowing up or whatever it is that you imagine. Or you could play this during Halloween time. As it is, though, I don't think this song needs much for it to be scary, because if you didn't recognize it, it's this song. Friday, gotta get down on Friday. I am so sorry that I got that stuck in your mind. But taking this same song, we can also do some other fun things with this. So that's changing the speed, but let's also change the pitch. Changing the pitch can do some cool things, because remember, when you're changing the speed, you're making it go faster or slower, and you're also raising or lowering, respectively, the pitch, the pitch of your audio, so it will sound higher pitch or lower pitch. Well, you can also increase or decrease the pitch without changing how fast or slow the song is. Go to the Effect menu and choose Change Pitch. Now, here's what can be really funny, is take a song that is a female artist singing the song, lower the pitch by about 20%, 20 or 30%, and you tell me if this sound still sounds like a female singing this song. Friday, Friday. Sounds like a guy singing it, doesn't it? And if you lower the pitch, and you can experiment because it's all completely dependent upon the voice and how high the voice is to begin with or how low. And what I find is whenever you change the pitch, it sounds more like they have an accent. Friday, Friday, gotta get down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend. I'm so sorry I'm getting the song stuck in your mind, but that almost sounds like a group of rappers or something singing this song, and male artists. Well, now let's take it to the flip side and load a male song, that song we were playing earlier. A chain reaction like dominoes. I So that is the normal way. Now we're going to change the pitch and raise the pitch by, let's say, 30%. And you'll notice that what it does, of course, it raises it, and it does make it sound a little bit feminine, but you're not going to be able to totally turn a male voice into a female voice with this same method, because the dynamics are different, and it doesn't work going up like that from male to female. It's easier to go from female to male, but not as easy to go from male to female. Listen to it now. Now, though, let's look at that same example of changing the pitch as applied to just a regular voice. And we will apply this to my voice, is change the pitch on this. So go to the effect menu and choose change pitch. I'm going to leave it jumping up about 30%. And you can hear what my voice sounds like at 30% raised.
The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today.
Now, see, I don't think that sounds quite like a female. It's, closer than my voice is, but not like a female at all. How about lowering the pitch this time? I've lowered my voice minus 38%.
The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks.
If you need a demon in your audio, or like a really bad guy, you could consider doing this, just changing the pitch. Next, let's go to changing the tempo. This is getting into, tempo is a musical term that is essentially the speed of a song. But when you change the tempo of audio, you are not changing the pitch. So you're making it faster or slower, but the pitch isn't being raised or lowered. So you won't sound like a demon, or you won't sound like a chipmunk. You will sound like in the middle. Would that be a demon chipmunk in the middle? What do demon chipmunks sound like? Well, I don't know. So this time we'll take my same audio and we'll change the pitch, the tempo, to minus 44 and test this out to see how this sounds slowed down but not lowered. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. In case you talk way too fast in your podcast and people are always telling you that you need to slow down your podcast because you're talking too fast and they can't listen any faster than you're already talking, then maybe you should run this filter on your audio and record yourself and slow yourself down. For the Ramen Noodle theme song that I'm working on, one of the people that submitted their audio had this musical part that was really hard to play. So what they did is they recorded it at a slower speed and then they sped it up. So now listen to my voice sped up. I'll speed it up to about 42%. And this is under the effect menu, change tempo. Listen to this, sped up by 42%. The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today. You could do this if you need a disclaimer in your podcast or one of those little things where you can say not valid in all states, must see site for details, blah, 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 blah. Just like they do in the commercials or that Micro Machines guy. You can have a lot of fun with this in changing the tempo of stuff. Now, there's something really popular that was done using the same effect, but they didn't quite do it with Audacity because Audacity, unfortunately, just isn't as smooth. Did you notice when I slowed it down how choppy it still was? Maybe if I do this to some music, you'll be able to hear what I'm talking about and how choppy it remains when you slow it down, the tempo, but you're not changing the pitch. So I've got my music. I'm going to slow it down by minus 42%. So you can hear this choppiness and this kind of clicking sound that you get. And this is just an unfortunate side effect that Audacity has with this filter.
Chain reaction like
You hear that kind of that is coming from Audacity in the way that's processing the audio. But there is something that has come from this that has gotten much more publicity in slowing a song down. And this actually sounds, some people would say this sounds better than the original song. And that is a Justin Bieber song, 800% slower. And they used a different program for this. Sounds kind of atmospheric and suddenly beautiful. As you can look on YouTube and see that some people take stuff like this and put it over video of planets running into Earth and total destruction of Earth and just taking a funny approach. And unfortunately, you can't get as smooth of an effect like that in Audacity, at least at the moment. I may come back and say that, oh, here's the plugin that you need, but I've looked all around for free stuff, and it's not very easy to do with free stuff. However, there are separate programs you can use to do this, and one of them is free. It's called Paul Stretch. There's a version for Windows, a version for Linux, I believe, and a version for OS X. I will have the links to these in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/34. Now, these programs are much more complicated and have a lot of knobs and dials, and you can't really tell. The interface isn't that great, but you can still play with it. That's Paul Stretch, and like I said, the links will be in the show notes. Moving on, there are some other effects in Audacity that can give you some crazy things. Here's an effect called the turntable warping. Have you seen those turntables? By turntable, they mean a record player, that our great-great-great-great-grandfather told us he saw in a history museum once. A record player, when you start it out, might sound that, and it gets back into the regular speed of the audio. Well, you can do that with Audacity. This is a plugin that you have to download, and I'll have the link to this in the show notes. It's called Turntable Warping, and it can run on either mono or stereo files. When you open it up, you have 5 different options. Initial step, which is where you want it to start. Initial amplitude, how loud you want it to start. The change time, how long across the section you have that you want it to change. The end step, which is its pitch, and the end amplitude, which is the volume that it reaches. So the initial stuff is how it starts, and the end stuff is how it finishes or ends. So I'm setting this to start at -18, and that's -18 semitones. No, let's make this -12 semitones. If you know music, an octave is made up of 12 semitones. The semitones are the half steps. So -12 will give us a full octave. So this will start 1 octave lower. I'll leave the volume at 100. The change time I'll set to 70. And the end step will be 0 because I want it to be normal. And the end amplitude 100. So 100% on that. And listen to this, and it sounds kind of like a record would sound as you just start it up playing.
Stationary life, rectangular design.
Now that can be really cool to do, and here's another way that you could use it. Imagine that you want to slow something down. Instead of, for a special effect, you see this sometimes in movies where suddenly stuff goes slow motion. Instead of that harsh bang where it's suddenly into slow motion, you could slow it down gradually by using this same effect. So you go to the effect menu, choose turntable warping. It will probably be near the bottom. And this time I'll reverse the numbers. So initial step will be 0. End step will be -12. 12. And you'll hear that it will lower as I play this instead of raising up. So this could be like when the music is dying or dying battery effect.
Black suits, white dots in a geometric line.
So you could use that if you've got something is dying, some audio or a robot in your story or in your podcast or just whatever kind of special effect there. Again, don't do this on your entire podcast unless you really want to turn off your audience to your podcast. Here's another one. It's the sliding time scale / pitch shift. This one can be a lot of fun. I'll take this one and apply it to my voice in Audacity. So I select the audio that I want to edit, and I recommend doing this with mono audio. So I just check sliding time scale and pitch shift, and this will adjust it will slide it back and forth as you'll hear. It's very similar to that record thing, somewhat in this. So what I'm going to do is I will tell it that I want my initial tempo to be no change. I want my final tempo to be 70%. I want my final pitch to be in semitones, so I'll make it 12. That'll jump up an octave. And so what we'll do is it starts out normal, and it starts sliding it up into this setting. So you can hear this on just that normal recording of my voice.
The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today.
This could be a great thing that you could do in those examples when people have in the commercials where the computer is about to blow up and it starts getting faster and faster and faster and higher and higher and higher, and then just it blows up. You can do that with this effect, is that you can make it just slowly sliding, faster, faster, higher and higher, faster and faster, higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Let's try this just for fun, because this is all about having fun in this episode. I am sliding the final tempo change to 140%, and the final pitch shift can't change any more than 12. But let's see what happens if I do the initial pitch shift. No, that's not going to do it. So initial pitch shift, I'll leave it 0, so it starts normal, and then it will rise up to 12. And you can hear this. Now, that's the same pitch shift, but now it's the time shift that is changing. So it starts shifting, getting even faster as it's getting higher.
The Ramen Noodle Clean Comedy Podcast is proudly sponsored by Pink Chevy Trucks. Get one today.
Fun stuff that you can do there. And do not do this to your podcast, at least the whole thing. You can do this now and then, but treat these effects like salt and pepper. Little bits go a long way and can change your audio in weird, totally crazy ways. These are some of the effects that you can do in Audacity. Now, I don't have time to show you all of the different effects built into Audacity or all of the different plugins that are out there. But if you find a plugin, let me tell you about the simple way of installing the plugins. If you are on Windows, then you want to go to your Program Files folder. If you're on a Mac, then you want to go to your Applications folder. And this would be the Applications folder on your system, not your personal folder under your name and then Applications, but under your main hard drive on your Mac. Or on Windows, it's the Program Files folder. Find the Audacity folder and the Plugins folder, and you'll find a bunch of .ny files in here. These are Nyquist plugins that you can drag and drop into Audacity or into this folder. When you download something that says it's a Nyquist, this is where you put it. Don't put it in the Nyquist folder. Put it in the plugins folder. And you can even drop in VST effects into here, or there's another section, and it depends really on your operating system. Windows has one place to drop VST effects, and OS X has another place to drop VST effects. And you can put those, you can get all sorts of effects. And many effects that are VST are not necessarily made for Audacity, but they work with Audacity. So check it out, and you can search all over the place. I'll have a couple links in the show notes to some VST effects and where you can put those. So in Audacity, it will look for these, and it loads them on startup. So if you put these in your folder, make sure that you restart Audacity. And check out, find some, try them out. Tell me about them if you find some really cool effects or some really crazy noises that you can do in Audacity and stuff that you've enjoyed. Or just share with me stuff you want to do. There's not enough time here to get into auto-tuning, which is unfortunately a pretty complicated process with Audacity. It's easier if you buy some software for it, unfortunately. But next I want to talk about what you can do with a mixer. So everything you do in Audacity is post-production. That is, you do it after you've recorded your audio. If you want real-time effects, or if you don't want to have to mess with processing, then you can get a mixer that has effects built into it. Now I'm using a Behringer X1832 USB mixer. With the Behringer line of mixers, any of them that have FX, and I believe any of them that have X in it, have the effects processor. And the way that you set this up on a mixer is that you look at all of your channels, and every channel probably has an FX knob. That knob sets on the mixer how much volume, how much of that audio for that channel to send to the effects processor. That way you can adjust your volume that's being sent to the effects processor, and oftentimes there is a separate volume for the effects themselves. So when they come back into your feed, they can do different things. So what I'll do here is I will switch on my mixer so that you hear the effects and my voice. Now this is the number 1 setting on my mixer. And you can tell that it's pretty strong. Now, since I'm doing 2 things at a time, I can turn down the volume of the effects. Now, this is a little bit more manageable. It sounds like I'm in a big hall. And in fact, that is what this effect is called on the mixer. This is the hall effect. I can turn it up, or I can turn it down, or I can even set this to be the only sound that you hear is this mixer and the special effects. But that can get pretty annoying after not long. But a great thing that you can do if you're doing drama. Then there is also the room setting. And this does the same thing, but this time it sounds like you're in more of a room. Next is the plate setting. The plate setting is the room setting. Here's the room. And then the plate setting has, again, it's just slightly different effect. This is the reverb, so it's going to sound pretty much the same. I turn my effects volume down. Then there is the gated setting for your sound. And you hear that it's echoing a whole lot more, reverbing a whole lot more in the background. Then there's even a setting called reverse on the mixer. Now, don't get this confused. It's not actually reversing the audio, but it's a reverse reverb that can give you this kind of electronic sound or futuristic, maybe robotic sound to your voice. It's somewhat reversing the reverb. It's reversing the way that it processes the reverb. There are also ambience and delay effects. This is called early reflections. And I have most of these settings set to just their defaults. I can adjust the strength or the speed of these effects on this mixer, but I'm just using the defaults here. Here is now the ambience effect. And you can hear what this sounds like as I speak, but it doesn't really have much sound after I stop speaking. It's only while I speak. That's the ambience effect. Next is the delay effect. And the delay effect is a little bit hard to explain, but you can get somewhat of an idea of what it's doing. Here I am talking in just the regular, only the special effects, so you can hear what that sounds like as delay. Now I'll bring back my real voice so you can hear that. And of course, there is echo, which you know what echo does. And that can get annoying after a second. Then we come into that was the delay. Now is the echo. Echo. Stop being so silly. April Fools. That's the echo effect. Now are modulation effects, and these change the way that your voice sounds, not just how your voice is reflected, but how it actually sounds. Listen now as I have this not mixed. This is the chorus effect only by itself. It sounds like there are a bunch of Daniels all talking at the same time. Now, this is the flanger effect. That's the flanger effect, so that you can hear that and know what that is doing to the audio and how that's changing it. It's the flanger effect. Let me do that one more time so you can hear it. This is the flanger effect. It gives this really kind of up and down sound that is just doing itself automatically. Moving on to the number 12 setting on this mixer. And these settings apply to any of the Behringer mixers and often other brands of mixers as well. This is now the phaser effect, and you'll hear something very similar to the phaser effect in Audacity as well, how it's phasing in and out and coming up and down. And if you're wearing stereo headphones, you're hearing it come up and down in the left ear and the right ear, left and right, going back and forth like this. Then we get into some really crazy effects. This is detune on the mixer. So I've set it to detune and not quite sure what it's doing, but I do now have it on solo. So you're hearing only this effect and how it's applying to my voice. That's the detone setting, and I can adjust that from 0 to 100. I'm turning it up and down right now, and it's not really changing it all that much, but maybe you could use this in some way with your audio. This next one is the craziest of them all. And if you've listened to the Ramen Noodle, then you've heard me use this sometimes, and you could call this the chipmunk filter. For quite obvious reasons is that it makes me sound like a chipmunk. Is that my voice? Oh well. I can adjust if this goes up, or I can start bringing it down. Here I am normal, now I'm going down, and this goes down and down and down. You, Scrooge, will be visited by 3 spirits. Without the visit from these 3 spirits, you can't hope to survive the next weekend. So, some totally crazy effects that you can do, and depending on the mixer, there might be systems where it combines the effects, like delay plus reverb, or it can combine the chorus plus reverb, so it can sound like there are several of you all singing in this big room. So those are some of the reverb and special effects that you can do with a mixer, and you will find very similar settings on other mixers. The cheapest mixer you can get from Behringer that has these settings is the Behringer 1204 FX. Now, don't just get the Behringer 1204. It doesn't have the effects processor on it. But get the Behringer 1204 FX if you want to have these effects. And there are many other mixers that have this built into them, and ways that you can change your audio in real time. And this works great if you don't want to process your audio afterward, or if you're doing this for a live audience. You can do all of these things. Now, like I said, the links to these separate programs that I've mentioned, the plugins rather that I've mentioned, and the links to this mixer, and I'm thinking there might be a cheaper mixer out there that has the effects in it, or you could get a separate effects processor. But the links to this will be in the show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/24. By the way, if you are in the Cincinnati area or anywhere near the Cincinnati area, please check out podcampcincinnati.com. I am organizing a podcamp for my area, and this isn't just for podcasters. This is for anyone in social media who wants to talk about blogging, social networking, podcasting, doing stuff on YouTube, online video, anything like that. This is the conference for you. But it's an unconference, which means that you can present. Anyone can present, and you're certainly welcome and expected sometimes to walk out of sessions if you're not getting what you need, or if you got what you need. Check out podcampcincinnati.com. Depending on the time of the week that you're checking it, you may be seeing the old site or you may be seeing the new site. So don't judge it by its cover if you first see it and think, that's a blue, boring, standard WordPress template looking site. I'm switching all of my stuff over to the Genesis framework for WordPress, and I'm really liking it. Noodle.mx/Genesis if you want to check out the theme and purchase it there. That is an affiliate link, and I would be grateful if you do purchase it through that link. There's also noodle.mx/thesis and noodle.mx/standard theme. So like I said, get the show notes for this episode over at theaudacitytopodcast.com and check out the site for PodCamp Cincinnati. And if you're in the area, please come to it. It would be great to meet you or just host you in some way at the conference. And then you can learn all sorts of stuff about podcasting or social media or blogging or whatever, and meet big names or little names. And you could become a big name from going to a PodCamp. Check out the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/34. Send your suggestions and crazy effects and plugins and stuff to feedback@noodle.mx or call 859-353-4332 or leave a comment on the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/34. Please follow me on twitter.com/theramennoodle. And check out my other podcasts over on the Noodle Mix Network, noodle.mx. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you very much for listening. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network over at noodle.mx, and is also a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network. Find more podcasts about technology over at techpodcast.com. And I'm so sorry for getting Friday stuck on your mind.